Today on Tag, we'll be talking about guns with actor and activist Jason George of TV Station 19. Hollywood and guns, what are the protocols for guns on set? How did Jason become such an activist on the gun issue? Today on Tag. Thank you for joining us today on Tag, talking about guns. Today we're talking with actor and activist Jason George. Jason was on Grey's Anatomy, and then Station 19 spun off from Grey's Anatomy, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. It's a
Thursday
great thing to see
nights.
my character spun off. That's always fun.
Thursday nights, 8 o'clock, ABC. Back episodes on Hulu if I want to go back.
Yep, you can stream the whole thing. You can catch up. You can watch multiple times if you want to.
And I'm going to, by the way, Jason.
As you
So
should.
thank you for joining us today. You are a strong advocate for gun reforms. We read your op-ed in People magazine last year, I believe it was. I think it was maybe June of last year. Can you tell us, Jason, why you became such an advocate for gun safety?
Well, one of the first and foremost, I mean, like a lot of Americans, I'm a parent. I'm a dad. And school shootings have become far more prevalent. I mean, I don't remember school shootings when I was in school, and my kids do. They do drills regularly now. And the idea that the concept, I'm a kid of the 80s. So the whole get under your desk because nukes could be coming thing we were in the tail end of that. Right. And, we would finally realize it's not going to make a difference being under the desk. Right. They dropped the bomb. But that was an abnormal thing. But it felt like it also will probably never happen. It felt like a million things needed to go wrong for that to happen. My kids are doing similar drills for something that in the back of their minds is a real possibility. And it horrifies me that that's the case. That's one piece of it. The other piece of it is that I have family members who have been the victims of gun violence, who've been shot to death. My cousin Daryl was killed and his murder never found. And we also have some close friends of the family who actually have been who perpetrated gun violence. I've seen it from all the different sides. And in that particular instance, I've seen where people who are really pretty beautiful human beings had a flash moment of anger and the opportunity presented by a readily accessible gun, and horrific things happen. So it's one of those things that for me, I just I felt like I need to put it out there to try and make a better world for my kids. And also remind folks that, like, I get it. You're not that person, except on that one day when you are.
Were those, Jason, what you're referring to, was that an incident involving another person?
Yes. It was, again, readily access to a gun. The gun was in the car, and anger with people that you cared about.
Yeah.
And that's a very common thing. Look, the joke in my house is that the one time that there was a gun in the George household when I was growing up people broke in and stole it, and it was the one thing that they stole. Read as that my parents were on the way to the divorce, and somebody had the common sense to say that thing needs to not be in the house because somebody's not walking out of here. And so that's always resonated for me that, a gun in the house just ups the chance of somebody not walking out, whether it's a spouse or, unfortunately, as we've seen, in too many cases, a child, they're not stored properly.
Well, you raise a great point because of the immediate access, and that snap decision is also reflected in suicide numbers, right? So,
oh yeah, I mean that for me is a huge thing. I mean, look, I stick my nose in this, and the thing that for me, I'm from a military town. My dad was Navy. My three best friends, we were the four horsemen throughout high school, and it's Naval Academy, Virginia Military Institute, Virginia Tech, ROTC, which is basically a military academy inside of a university. I grew up in a town there's the largest naval base in the world. Everybody was familiar with guns. Everybody was familiar with things, and it was a military town. But I love and have incredible respect for the military and the number of service people who take if a soldier with PTSD is going to take their life, they're going to do it with a gun.
Right.
And one of the things that for me, that whenever I have conversations with people who are no compromise, Second Amendment absolutists, I bring up, if you say you love the troops, not in anything other than a rah rah. I wave a flag, but I don't really know what that means. I don't believe it. If you're just doing it as a performative thing, then you don't want them to end their own life.
Right.
I know incredible people who are self-proclaimed gun nuts who will say, if you have PTSD, if you're in a dark place, maybe give your guns to your friends. Maybe, like people who have dozens of guns on their own and are on social media, self-proclaimed gun nuts will say, in that particular instance, maybe not. So if you say you love the troops, there are laws that we can all agree on that are smart things to do. Maybe making sure that somebody who's in a dark psychological place mentally, and a veteran, going through post-traumatic, maybe they shouldn't have access to their gun if they're in that space. I'm not saying that you take guns from veterans. I'm not saying you take guns from people who are responsible with them. But I'm saying if they've been deemed mentally unfit to where you can't handle your money, maybe the gun is a bad idea in the house.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned that you grew up in a military town, Virginia Beach, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of people there, I haven't seen a study, particularly Virginia Beach, but I'm assuming it's a big pro-Second Amendment community.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. But, I would say yes, but I would also say, like a lot of Virginia, it's very purple, if we're going to put this in red and blue terms. In other words, people are, people enjoy their guns, but most of the officers I grew up with, look again, the military folks I grew up and respected the most are what Colin Powell referred to himself as, reluctant warriors. I am very good at this thing. Never use me. Never send me in. If you send me in, it will be bad. And their same mentality applied to how I think they handled their weapons. I hope I never have to use this thing. I hope I never have a problem in my house. I'm not going to, and I don't want, and they took it very seriously. And a lot of the veterans I grew up with will acknowledge that weapons of war that are, necessary when you're trying to win a war, there is no use for that in regular everyday society, and that's the thing. I mean, if you're going to protect your house, your regular handgun's going to get it done. If you're going to go hunting and you're using an automatic weapon, you suck as a hunter. You're not good at this. There's no glory in using tracer fire to tag the deer.
Well, but when we just did a study, Beacon Research, on gun issues, and only 34%, just over a third of gun owners favor any ban on assault weapons. Part of it is a lack of definition on what an assault weapon is.
Right.
But only a third of gun owners, the amount of support for background checks, red flag laws, super high.
It's huge.
And then when we talked about before about suicides, 25,000 suicides a year, basically, no one commits suicide with an assault weapon. Right. They're using a handgun. And if you try to commit suicide with a gun, over 90% it's going to happen. If you try any other way at all, the odds are that you won't succeed.
Right. The chances of survival are much greater, and so, I mean, look, again, what are the things that we can agree on? And that's where I have a problem with the no compromise folks, because, red flag laws, like I said, I have family who were members, who are victims of gun violence and domestic abuse combined. And I know people who've perpetrated essentially gun violence and domestic abuse. And if you can spot that ahead of time, I remember seeing this one statistic that blew me away, that 25% of mass shootings, defined as, 4, people shot or more, 25% of those shooters had been convicted of some form of domestic abuse at some point in time. So my thought is, if you commit domestic abuse, how about the red flag law takes your guns? Worst case scenario, somebody who's a domestic abuser, I got no problem with that.
Right.
But then you also prevent that other on down the thing. If somebody's willing to do that to someone that they supposedly love, there's an anger level, impulse issues to what are they willing to do to people that they don't even know, and that connection there is obvious. So I'm like, so that to me is there are a lot of conversations we could be having about laws that are smart to use data-driven logic to try and attack the problems that we're all seeing as a nation.
Right. Agreed. Now, let me ask you, because we recently had this horrible on-set incident where a person, was killed and somebody else was seriously injured, right?
Mhm.
And then you worked on a show that's in the hospital, in a fire department. Do you have you worked with guns on set? What kind of precautions do you have to take when you're on set with guns? Because for the rest of the world, we don't. I would have no idea what the onset precautions are for a real gun. I wouldn't even know you use a real gun.
Well, you usually don't. You usually don't. I mean, there's a person usually labeled as an armorer, a subsidiary of the props department. And on the best sets, I heard this great statement because there's been a big conversation in the industry about this exact thing for obvious reasons. I heard this one armorer say the best phrase. He said, "My job as an armorer is two things, and then a whole bunch of things to get to those two things. Number one is to make sure that everybody is absolutely safe. And then number two is to make sure everybody feels safe. So if you're doing things to make sure that we're safe, but I don't know about it, and I feel like, and I see a gun being pointed in my direction, and I'm trying to dodge it, you screwed up one of those things." So the best sets I've been on, the armorer, nobody touches the gun except for the armorer and the person who's going to be holding the gun. Nobody. That the armorer walks up to that individual, shows the person that's going to, anybody who's in vicinity of the gun, shows them the gun is not loaded, shows them that it's a rubber gun, shows them whatever the issue is, because sometimes it's not even a real gun, it's just a hunk of rubber. Sometimes it's actually got a barrel. There's a million things that you can do to make sure everybody sees and knows that they're safe. And it's a great way to double, triple, quadruple check and make sure that that everything is absolutely safe. So something broke down on that set. And now there's a conversation in this industry about, do you need guns at all? And it's gotten really interesting because now there's a company who's making, because I said 95% of the time you don't need guns because everybody's got visual effects. Newsflash, my show is not actually shot in Seattle. We use green screens all the time to look like we're in Seattle. Visual effects have become far more cost efficient. And so I remember seeing a friend who did a short, this action short, and not a single bullet was fired. All the blood splatters, everything was digitally done, and you didn't notice it when you're watching it. And then they've got these guns. I thought, well, what if you need the lighting effect? Like, remember the new Batman movie, there's a shot where automatic weapons, it's almost pitch black and the automatic weapons are lighting up everything. They have these new guns where they have LED lights inside the barrel. That look exactly like gun. So basically the only reason to do it is because that's what I'm used to, and I'm stubborn, and I don't want to change, and I don't want to find out new stuff. And the reality is there could be cost savings there as well. And I don't have a knee-jerk response to say get rid of the guns on set. I'm just saying let's have the conversation to find solutions, and you may find new things and find out it's actually more cost efficient to do it this way than the way we've been doing it. So
I have many questions. First question, is an armorer a specific person who's hired just when there's a gun on set and that's it?
Yep, that is all they do. An armorer is when there are going to be guns on a set, any kind of gunfire, that sort of thing. Their sole job is to handle those weapons to make sure. Now, again, the more you decrease the budget, the less money there is, the more that person may have other duties. Okay. My understanding is on that particular production, the armorer was also a general props person, and that gets problematic. And then also they had the issue of, because it was a period piece set in the West, you don't necessarily have as many rubber guns and that sort of thing, or guns that shoot blanks. Because nowadays, certainly ever since the Crow, the Brandon Lee incident back in the 90s, guns that shoot blanks you can't put a live round into those guns anymore. That's been a thing for decades. But when you get to vintage weapons, that might not be a safety protocol that's in existence, because obviously it's with newer guns. So yeah, there's a million ways it broke down. But yeah, an armorer that should be their sole job. But sometimes people cut corners on safety and give them multiple jobs. And so the attention is not paid solely to the weapons.
The other big revelation, of course, is that your show's not shot in Seattle. So did you ever watch Dexter, by the way? Did you ever watch Dexter?
I did not watch a lot of Dexter.
Miami, right? A lot of the Miami hues shot in Long Beach, California.
Right, yeah.
Seinfeld, which was shot right by, where we live, their Central Park was a bench.
Yeah.
And then the exteriors were Central Park, but the whole Central Park was a bench on a studio lot.
It's Hollywood. All that matters is what's inside the frame. Inside the frame. You know,
So you were nice enough last year. You did a taping of, which is on the 97% YouTube page, of tips when you're at a holiday meal. And I'm sure, you know, when we, in the entertainment business, we think of the entertainment business being pretty progressive, but not everybody agrees on all the issues. There are a lot of people in the entertainment business. How do you, if you're having a conversation with somebody, especially this time of year, how do you, as you have said about yourself, you speak purple, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So how do you have those conversations with people and take the temperature down on those tough questions?
And shooting a gun is fun. You feel the power of it. It's sexy. I've been to the Army training base just outside of town, and shot major artillery weapons. They're amazing, powerful things. But as I point out to people, so is dynamite. I don't necessarily run down the street with it. I don't necessarily put it in my house. You got to really think about. You can't treat it like it's a garden hoe, and let's acknowledge that. But I am willing to fully acknowledge that it may protect you in your home. It may do certain things, but can we acknowledge that we don't want innocent people to die? So I start with questions and work backwards from there. As long as they're willing to acknowledge that, well, no, of course we don't want innocent people to die. Okay, well then let's work from there. What are some ideas? If I told you that, like I just said, 25% of mass shooters beat their spouses. Right. Would you object to maybe having a conversation about that? When you ask the questions, when you acknowledge that, like, I don't demonize you because you like guns. That's not a problem for me. My problem is when you refuse to try and solve the problem and you only want to say absolute Second Amendment, no change. And I'm like, so you ignore the innocent lives that are getting lost. Because there's got to be some
right. There is definitely a validity to the fact that gun owners feel that people talk down to them because they own guns. If you don't, it's absolutely true.
And I get that, and I've been in talks where with Congress people, and I had people who the guy was saying that it's impossible to get a gun in California. It's impossible to get a gun. I said, do you own a gun? I said, yeah. I said, so it's not impossible. It was, and I had to say, what you're looking for is you want to be able to carry your gun everywhere you go. And you can see how once it's outside your home, we get into multiple issues of, it's a much deeper conversation. A lot more factors come into play. But then another woman got up and said, why are we playing around with this? We just got to take the guns. We got to get rid of the guns. I said, now you're my problem. I was like, no, the Second Amendment is a real thing. And you said, you got to acknowledge that people actually do have a right to protect their homes, yada, yada, yada. So once you get people to understand that you're not, if everybody acknowledges you're trying to solve the problem as opposed to win the argument,
right?
We got to pull the politics out of it, and we all just got to get in and try and solve the problem.
Jason, 97% of Americans favor background checks. The lowest number that I've seen is 89% like background checks. Only 86% of Americans like grilled cheese sandwiches. So how could you not have background checks? It's the most popular thing that we have in America is the idea of background checks.
The fact that it's not universal, the fact that it keeps, that the loophole keeps slipping through, that we keep going round and round and round about this, even while we have more and more shootings, is just proof to me that Congress people are being held hostage, and by their own fear. Because I don't think that I think that the truth is, I mean, as we've seen with the problems with the NRA and that sort of, the emperor has no clothes. The money's not there. There are vast numbers of members, largely are people who want the discounts in the store, who want to trade information, best practices, and that sort of thing.
Training.
Gun training. I mean, once upon a time, the NRA actually was about gun safety, and that was a beautiful thing. But then, ever since Reagan got shot, all that changed deeply, and it's become largely, as people are starting to really realize, even some of the most staunch and non-compromised people are saying, I think the organization is corrupt. I think there's financial corruption. I think there's other things going on. And for me, they're not trying to solve the problem. They're just trying to make sure that it stays open, keeping some kind of lack of universal background checks, keeping that gun show loophole, keeps guns moving, keeps gun sales happening, keeps the wheel going. And I'm like, I'm not interested in that. I'm just interested in solving the problems. And just buy a gun. Go buy your gun, but you got to wait 3 days and we got to check you out. The vast majority of Americans want to be able to have a gun to protect themselves, have guns to hunt, and also think that have no problem waiting a few days while they make sure that they're not murderous felons. in the process.
So I'm supposed to ask you these rapid fire questions. Who's more likely on Grey's Anatomy Station 19 to using any character from the series? Who do you think would be most likely to be an outspoken Second Amendment advocate?
Outspoken Second Amendment advocate. On the series that we have, you know what? There's a. I'm going to give you two possible options. On Station 19 right now, there's a Captain Beckett, played by a wonderful actor, Josh, and he's very much a more get over it, rub some dirt in it, old school, character, and so I think he might be on Station 19.
Okay.
So,
on those two shows, who would brag the most about their extensive gun collection?
Who would brag the most about their extensive gun collection? Again, I'll go with the Beckett, but I might throw in I don't know, maybe Alex Karev on Grey's Anatomy.
Okay.
You know what I mean? He has an interesting background.
And then who would you say has never held or seen a gun in real life on both of those shows?
Oh wow, never seen or held a gun in real life. I may say Jake Borelli. I don't know on Grey's.
Sorry, Jake. Then last question: when are you going to run for office?
Oh no! I don't need people digging through my trash and coming for me like that. I like being able to say what I want to say without it's like what we're talking about. The paralyzing piece of Congress is there. People are too afraid, are trying to make sure they keep their job. They're so afraid of losing their job that they're not doing their job.
Yeah.
Even when 90% of Americans are going, literally, just this one thing we all agree on. So just make a law that does this one thing and we'll be good. And they're afraid of losing their job. They're afraid that it'll bring them heat. They're afraid of, and it's like, do your job.
That's why we need you. Jason, each time we do one of these, we ask somebody to tag a future guest, a potential future guest that we should talk to for this. Who would you like us to speak with about the gun issue? I
see what you did. That tag someone. I see how you work. I see how it goes. One of my best friends, Sean McGuire. He is a Brit who actually, became a naturalized U.S. citizen recently. Whose wife is a former as beautiful as she is, was an undercover detective.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Now,
which I said either that's the best idea you ever had or the worst idea, because you will get away with nothing.
Sean was on Once Upon a Time.
Yes,
he played Robin Hood. I think.
Yes, he was the Robin Hood, and so he's fantastic actor and a very funny, eloquent guy. I love him.
That's a great idea.
And because having a former law enforcement person in his house and coming from a different country, there's an extra viewpoint that I think will be interesting for.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jason. So Station 19, Thursday nights 8:00.
Thursday nights 8:00.
ABC.
Yep, ABC, then streams on Hulu.
What season is this? You started in December in 2018 on station.
Yeah, we are in season 5.
Wow.
Of the show. We are in season 5. I'm directing my first episode coming out.
Congratulations.
My directorial debut.
That's great.
And television directorial. And then and Grey's Anatomy is in season 18.
That's unbelievable.
Which is insane. Which is it's a unicorn.
That's unbelievable.
But blessed in so many ways.
What show has been on as long as Grey's Anatomy? 60 Minutes.
No, you got things like I think and their friends, Ellen and Law and Order SVU.
Oh, okay.
And I think Mariska Hargitay, I think she and Ellen are friends, and so probably just because they've just both been in the game at the top of the game for kids who were born are now graduating high school. And
different networks, but that would be a fantastic crossover.
Wouldn't it?
It would.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Jason. We're going to end it there. Much appreciated. Thank you very much for joining us for TAG. Look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Well, thanks for having me.